Welcome, beautiful people. Happy Leo season. I'm going live again today because I rewatched my live yesterday and realized I didn't touch on anything I wanted to touch on about my story, and I really kind of got up on a soapbox. So this is me coming down from my soapbox and sharing my actual story. I also had to download that as a society, we've been conditioned to be so focused in the how of things. Like, you can just Google, like, how to do a certain thing. And I feel like that has kind of trained us to rely on, like, us to be able to figure out a how of something before we actually, like, take action towards it. And when it applies, like, yes, it's useful and amazing that we have that ability to do that. Like, Google, like, how to start a YouTube channel or how to whatever, do anything. We can literally Google it and it's on YouTube or anywhere we can find on the internet, which is amazing. And it also has kind of conditioned us to think that's how our real lives work, like how our physical lives work. If we know the how, if we can figure out how to do it by watching someone else or by asking someone else how they did it, then we will know how to do it. And it's just kind of incorrect for most people. And like I said yesterday in my live, it's so important to follow your internal guidance system and where that is really leading you. So if you didn't see my live, catch my live yesterday, it's on my IGTV if you want to check that out. But yeah, I also wanted to come on here and share with you guys in about an hour, I will be doing a full moon circle in Clubhouse with my co-creators, Crystal, Leah, and Jada. We would love to have you join us. You can register and book your spot through the link in my bio. So I hope to see you there. It's going to be amazing. This full moon is a really, really powerful one. We're in Leo season today. I don't know if I said that already, but today marks the beginning of Leo season, and we just had Venus move into Virgo, which is opposing Jupiter and Pisces right now. So there's a lot going on in the sky. A lot of powerful transits are happening to really wake us up to our expansion, to wake us up to our authenticity and our individuality, and really sharing from our hearts. So that is like what this full moon and this weekend is really bringing us and really calling us to look at is, and also how can we have faith? How can we have hope towards a bigger vision of the future and kind of not rely on external sources? I talked about this in my live yesterday as well, like not rely on external sources for confirmation or validation in what we know to be true inside of ourselves. So I just want to come on here and share my story of faith and how I really wanted to share how I got to Hawaii and how this is where I am right now, and how everything that has happened to me in the last 3 years really has led me to this place. I honestly never expected to be in Hawaii. I used to I literally was so stubborn about it. Like, oh, I'm never going to go to Hawaii because it's humid there. It's hot and I don't like the humidity. I like the hot, like this was when I lived in the mountains of Colorado at 10,000 feet, and like it never got above 75 degrees. And I got so used to that and used to the cold that I like loved it, and was like so stubborn about wanting any other type of weather environment to be where I lived. Like, I was dating a guy at the time and we lived together in the mountains, and we ended our relationship and he was moving to Hawaii, and that kind of like put this like thing in my head of like, oh, I'll never go to Hawaii, and also like it's probably so humid and hot there, like I'd probably hate it there. And so I literally had that inside of my brain for, I'm gonna say like 2 years of like, oh, I would never go to Hawaii. But the last like year and a half, I've really felt called here. On the last, I guess, 2 years, especially, that was about 4 years ago that I ended a relationship and that guy moved to Hawaii. And I was kind of like rejected Hawaii at that point, which is really funny. And then the only reason I was able to stay in the mountains of Colorado and move to Breckenridge, which I was in Frisco at the time, which is about 20 minutes from Breckenridge. They're really close to each other. The only reason I was able to stay in Breckenridge and live there for almost 2 years was because I started a relationship with a guy. And this has been like a pattern of my life, like being dependent on whoever I'm dating at the time to kind of like provide for me. And so I lived with him for about 1.5 years. And that is like the only reason I was able to stay in Breckenridge and live in Breckenridge and like have that be sustainable. Otherwise, I literally couldn't have stayed in Breckenridge because the rent was just so high. Like, I remember, so long story short, we ended up ending our relationship, and he had threatened to kick me out of his house like multiple times, and eventually he did it with 3 hours notice. and I was working at a vegan pizza shop at the time, and I was at work, and he texted me. He was out of town, texted me. I didn't have a car then. My car broke down and completely died when I was living at this house in Breckenridge, because there was work that I was like stalling to get done on the car. It was going to be about $2,500 worth of mechanical work that needed to be done on the car that I had at the time, and I was like putting it off, and then I like came up with the money to get it done. Again, I talked about this yesterday in my live, just the money struggles have been so real for me. This is like the second house, 8th house, like nodal dynamic I have going on in my birth chart. I found the money. I came up with the money. I think I borrowed it from my parents, and my boyfriend at the time was helping me to get my car fixed. And the mechanic fucked it up, and it completely died. It developed a nod rock, which means basically that it needed a new engine. And so after that, I didn't have a car for about a year and a half. And so I was like completely dependent on the guy I was dating at the time, living in his house, borrowing his car. Like I said, I was working at a vegan pizza shop up in Breckenridge, and I didn't have a car. So I had to like walk to work or take the bus every day, I remember. And I'm really glad I don't have my ring light on right now, because it's like super hot in my house. Leo season, starting with a bang. What was I saying? I didn't have a car. I had to walk to work or take the bus or get a ride from someone to town to work, because it was like 15 minutes of walking. No, it was like 30 minutes of walking from where I lived to go to work every day. And like I said, I didn't have a car, so I had to like figure out a ride to work every day. And one day I was at work, and my boyfriend was out of town, and I was watching his dog and staying at his house again. And I lived there for about a year and a half, and we had like a really tumultuous, traumatic relationship. It was like really mentally just exhausting and psychologically abusive, and it was just like not great. And I was in a really dark place back then. And so I was at work one day, and I get a text from him. He had we were on the rocks, and he'd been FaceTiming me, like wanting to make things up while he was away. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, if we're really serious about this, like I'm like willing to work this out and work things out between us, because I did love him so much. And I don't know, he just like something happened, and he just texted me out of the blue when I was at work and was like, you need to get out of my house, you need to move out within 3 hours, or I'm calling the cops. And we had a roommate living there with us too, so he was like, I'm gonna get the roommate to call the cops if you're not out in the next 3 hours. And I was literally at work. And so I had like this freak out moment of, where am I gonna go? I don't have a car. I have no money. I had maybe like $100 in my bank account. I have no money to, and I was actually gonna look up the transits of this, but I forgot, because it is a lot of work to dive into the transits of like the past. It just takes a lot of mental energy to look up any chart, any transits. It is it's energetically taxing. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when I talk about astrology in my videos that doesn't get really seen. So I'm talking about that now. I had intention to do this, but I didn't. And so I'm really curious, honestly, to look at what transits were going on then. But so anyways, I was freaking out, didn't have any way to get my stuff out of the house. Didn't have a place to go. My friends had asked me, that's what it was. My friends had asked me from work to go camping with them that night. And I had told him, I'm going camping with friends. Like, I won't be able to pick you up from the airport. And so it just like escalated. And he was like, I need you to move out in the next 3 hours. And the owners of the restaurant happened to be there that day. And I was just like panicking, like, do you know anyone that has an open space that I can like move into today? Because I literally need to get out in the next 3 hours. And she was like, yeah, we have like a lock off that you can come stay in. And I was like, thank like Jesus, because I have no idea what I would have done if like that hadn't have happened that way. And so one of my coworkers was like, I can help you like move all your stuff out. Like, do you need to leave work right now? And I was like, yes, I do. Like, can you help me put everything in his car? We went camping that night, and I'd planned to move into the house that the owners were welcoming me in, and had an open place for me to stay that next day, because I still wanted to go camping with my friends. And that is where I actually connected for the first time with one of my best friends, Josie. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so that like escalated. That is like how I ended up leaving Breckenridge. Eventually I stayed at that house for 2 months with them, and then they were like, we need you to like transition and find another place. And I still didn't really have a lot of cash flow or money to be able to do that and invest in my own place, because I remember looking at places and they were around like $1,600 a month, and that was like, I think that was about what I was making. I don't even know if I was making that then. but I just like, it didn't seem like I could do it. And so that's when I moved home. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know about when that happened. I moved home back to North Carolina, and I was in Florida, and I was in West Virginia for a few months, and then I booked a one-way ticket back to Colorado in January, and was staying with a friend for a couple months, and then the pandemic happened, and I had a whole like gig lined up and like salary job lined up to be traveling all the time, and I wouldn't have needed like a place to live, and I had this like really like seemingly cushy opportunity presented to me around work and like having a salary and being able to travel. And so the friend I was staying with was like, oh, if you're going to be traveling, like no need to get your own place anywhere, like just keep your stuff here and you can like travel and, you know, make money that way. And I was like, oh, thank God, because I still don't have enough resources to get my own place. And so then the pandemic happened like 2 weeks later, I want to say, and I didn't end up like, that job was like, it was all canceled. It was working crystal gem shows all around the country, and so of course everything shut down and it was all canceled. And then the woman I was staying with, a dear friend to me, was like, we're about to move at different like houses and we need you to find your own place. And I was like, again, in this place of like freaking out, like what am I gonna do? I still didn't have a car. And so I ended up like having to ask my parents for help to find a place, and I subleased a place last minute. It was actually like a saving grace that the pandemic happened, because that's why the woman I was subleasing from was moving out of the place in Boulder that I ended up living in for the next 4 months or so. But it's just crazy how everything worked out. And this is what I was like saying and expressing in my video yesterday of like, you can't replicate people's lives. Like, it might seem so from Instagram and how you like things are presented on this platform and how people make them seem like, oh, if I just do this, like it'll work out for me too. And it's like, no, you really have to follow your internal guidance system, because what works for someone else can't possibly be replicated in anyone else. And so it's really just about like surrendering, having faith, believing in the unconventional, and that you're supported and things are like going to work out no matter what happens. Hey, Forrest. And that has been like the theme of my life for the past 3 years, and kind of I've been like repeating that cycle a little bit of like feeling like, oh, I have this stable place that's temporary, and then all of a sudden it like something happens, things change, and I like am out of a place, I'm out of like resources, and then boom, last minute something comes in. And so that's really how my life has been for the past 3 years. And it's been a roller coaster. I will not ever say that it has been easy. And I do apologize if that has seemingly been how things have been for me through how I've presented them on Instagram, because that is not at all how my life has been. It has been a lot of up and down, and a lot of me riding the roller coaster wave of like emotion and of like not feeling supported, and then having to come back to surrendering, having to come back to faith. What does faith mean to you on a deep level? What does faith embodied look like? Full on surrender and trust, even though the mental shitstorm goes crazy, like trying to figure things out, again, trying to figure out that how, that it's just like it's not possible to figure out all the ins and outs. And I think, again, this is where I'm getting off on a tangent here, but so that's how I ended up, where am I now? I was, in Boulder. And then I was, as most of you know, and I posted about recently, I was like living out of my car for a couple months after that place ended, the lease ended, and I didn't want to renew it. And I was also scared that I didn't have enough money to be able to live there. And there are some other factors involved that just like led me to, and I, again, didn't have a car, so I had to accumulate that from a dear friend who thankfully has like prepared for this type of like situation and had an extra car for me to borrow. And even that was like a whole journey and like it's still an ongoing process. But anyways, that's a whole nother live for another day. So I got a car from a friend. I actually had to rent a car that cost me about $300 to rent for 2 days so that I could have a car to live out of and camp out of as I was transitioning out of that place that I lived in Boulder. And then I was camping for about 2 months, and then I ended up being able to get a place. This is when I lived in the tiny house. If you have been following me that long, you remember when I lived in the tiny house. I lived there for about 3 months in the mountains. And that was like one of my favorite places I've lived, I think. But that was like super, super last minute too, and I couldn't have like predicted that would happen. I was literally surfing Facebook one day and I saw it and was like, I need to reach out to her. And she's like, oh yeah, I just posted it, like it's still available. And I was like, I need to come see it now. Like, can you rent it to me? And then I think I had to like scrounge for money to be able to afford that deposit as well. And it's just been like a whole, you might be seeing like, you're like hearing a pattern here. Like, it's kind of been playing out that way ever since I left Breckenridge, or like that happened in Breckenridge. And so I lived in the tiny house, and then there were fires, really intense and really big fires last year where I was living then. And so I got evacuated from that place a week before I was meant to move out. And I was planning to go to LA and feel that out, see if I wanted to live there. And I ended up having to stay with a friend because I got evacuated from my house because the fires were really close to where I had been living at the time. And that was a whole very super scary, traumatic like thing that had happened. And luckily, like, I had a car and was able to get all my things out before anything happened. And I don't think anything happened to the property or anything like that. Is there a difference between escapism and conscious faith? That's a great question. I don't have an answer for it right now. But yes, there is a difference. I'm sure of that. That is all I know for now. The answers will come with time. So yeah, I was staying with a friend in Boulder for a week before I went to LA. I went to LA for a week and was like, nope, this is not for me. I moved back to Colorado and ended up again staying with a friend. And it was just kind of like this situation replaying itself. And then I stayed with him for about 2 or 3 months, I think. And again, it was kind of like this dynamic of like being more than friends and wanting to like create something bigger, but it just like wasn't aligning and wasn't working out. So we just kind of decided to take a pause on that. I moved out. I ended up having to, again, kind of borrow money from my parents to move into another place. And I was still living off unemployment. Then I'm so sweaty because this is bringing up a lot of energy for me. Telling this story to you guys. So I hope it's resonating and like inspiring. That is my intention with sharing it. I had to borrow money from my parents because unemployment still like wasn't doing it for me really, and I wasn't really consistent with the income I was creating in my business, which is still kind of like happening for me. I'm still not, again, I mentioned this yesterday, I'm still not where I want to be, and I still have all this money stuff that I feel is needed for me to like love on and grow through. Because it's still coming up. And when things repeat themselves, it's because we're not choosing to see the lesson, and we're not choosing to integrate the lesson that we've learned or haven't learned yet. So that's why it keeps repeating itself. And I feel like Forrest asked the question, is there a difference between escapism? Chef of the Trees asked, is there a difference between escapism and conscious faith? And I feel like I was just kind of escaping what those situations like happening to me were bringing up. And I was just constantly like, and this is like from my childhood as well, because I was just constantly moved around as a child. And until I was about like 14, we literally moved every year, sometimes twice a year. And so I never felt like I had the ability to like root down and ground in anywhere. And I feel like I was just constantly in this cycle of like escaping what those things were bringing up and what was like really trying and calling and crying to be felt from that. And so I feel like that is the difference. So funny, I said this will come with time, and here it is like coming out. The difference between escapism and conscious faith is faith is really like surrendering to what is being brought up through what's happening, and knowing that is still like, oh, it's all divine, it's all working out as it needs to. It's all just showing you, again, what you're not looking at because you're escaping from. I was escaping from through this like constant tumultuous of like moving around. I got off on a big tangent there, and I'm gonna have to end this soon because I can feel my energy waning. What was I saying? Oh, so I moved back to like a town right outside Boulder. And I was in Colorado this whole time, just kind of all around the Front Range area of Colorado, if you're familiar with it. And let's see, where was I taking this? Oh, so I lived with a friend who had a room. Luckily, like she had a room open up like literally a week before I had reached out and asked to stay with her. And I stayed there for about 3 or 4 months, and that was the last place I lived before moving to Hawaii. And I had been feeling this call to move to Hawaii for so long. Not so long, that is an exaggeration. I'm being a little melodramatic. My Sag moon is coming out, and Leo season, feel it. Anyways, and so, yeah, I'd been feeling this call to come visit Hawaii. I didn't know I wanted to live here. I thought I just wanted to visit. And so my friend actually reached out and was like, hey, do you know about this retreat? Like, our mutual friend is hosting this retreat in Hawaii. Have you seen about it? Do you know about it? It's the friend that I stayed with when I got evacuated from my house in the mountains when the wildfires were really close to me. And I hadn't heard about it from her, and then it was just so funny that it came in from her other friend, and I was like, oh, I'm there, like, I'm going. And so I had luckily like just got my tax return and was doing good, like, financially, better than I had been for the past probably year, or at least 6 months. It kind of goes in waves, like I talked about yesterday. I kind of go in waves of like having a lot of money, and then I spend it all and it's gone for a little bit, and then I have to like kind of recuperate and like look at what feelings those are causing to come up as it relates to that kind of pattern and cycle in my life. And so I, like I said, was doing financially well and was like, okay, I'm just gonna invest in this retreat for myself because it's going to be transformational. I know she does really amazing work. Her Instagram, if you want to check out what she does, she's amazing life coach, has amazing retreats. Brandolyn Tebow is her Instagram handle. Highly recommend her. And so I went to the retreat. I booked a ticket. Like, I had, thankfully, like, enough resources to be able to do this. And again, this is just kind of like a message that, like, when things are right and when things are in full alignment, the universe always provides. There is always a way. And I think this comes back to having faith and just knowing that, like, if something is like, there's a lot of friction or there's a lot of resistance around something you're trying to make work, it's probably because it's not meant to be. Like, when, like, follow the ease, follow the flow, follow the path of least resistance, because that is what will lead you to where you're meant to go. And that's your soul and the universe telling you, yes, you're in alignment. Yes, this is what you're meant to be doing. When it's hard is when we're trying to force is when we often lead ourselves to situations that aren't in our best, and that kind of lead us to burnout, or lead us to these types of experiences that we have to then unpack later on. And that's a whole other live video, but so I booked a one-way ticket to Hawaii because I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be there. I just really want to explore and island hop and go walk around, or not walk around, but just like explore and adventure. My Sag moon was like, I just want to book a one-way ticket and see how it goes and let things play out. I don't have any place to stay, but it's going to work out. And I know. And I think, again, this was like a little bit of faith coming in of like, I've felt called and led here for so long. Like, I know it's going to work out for me. No matter like what that looks like in reality. And it's funny, I had a lot of people like reaching out and family members being like, what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan? And I was like, I don't have a plan. Like, the universe is going to provide for me. If I'm meant to be in Hawaii, it will work out, and I'll find a way to make it work. I've been talking for a minute. Oh yeah, this has been 20 minutes, damn. Okay. Wrapping it up soon because I'm getting tired and I want to have energy for a full moon circle. That hopefully I will see you at. And if not, we do these for every new moon and full moon. Clubhouse is now open to anyone and everyone. That used to be only invite only, and so if you can download the app, you can get into Clubhouse. So would highly recommend Clubhouse. It's one of my favorite, no, it is my favorite app now, and where I spend the majority of my time when I'm on my phone, which is not often anymore, but keep getting off on tangents here. Can you tell my Venus is in Gemini and it's my chart ruler? Let's see. So I booked a one-way ticket to Hawaii, came here for the retreat, had an amazing time, an amazing like just realization and awakening of the things that I had been hiding from and suppressing, and I released so much emotion. I cried the whole weekend. It was like a 4-day event, and I literally don't think I stopped crying more than 30 minutes or an hour, like the whole weekend. It was so amazing and so healing and so cleansing for me. And that's kind of been the theme of my journey here in Hawaii. I came here with the intention to heal, and it has really been coming up strongly. So yeah, I got to Hawaii and was there for the retreat, and then I was telling my mom that I was booking a trip to Hawaii, and she's like, oh, I want to come with you, and my best friend's gonna come. And I was just like, okay, cool, like that'll be fun. And so we island hopped for about 2 weeks and spent time together, and it was very healing, very transformative as well. A lot was brought up again to like purge and clear and release. South Node is in my 3rd house right now, so We purging all the mental bullshit. All the things fogging my perception. That's what third house transits, south node of the third house transit will do. And then she left, and I was like, okay, well, I really like this one island, Maui, so I'm gonna fly back there. I'm gonna book a one-way ticket back there. It was like super cheap, which is again how I know that it was just like I was led here. Everything was just so easy and so cheap, and like I had enough to support it, and it was just like so, yeah, just like so much inflow. And so I didn't have a place to stay, but my friend was visiting with her dad, and I was gonna stay with them for a couple days. And then I ended up meeting someone out here that was like, oh, I have like an open room, you can stay with me, or like my roommate's never here, so you can stay with us, and you know, like we have room for you, and you can just like figure out what you're doing and find your place and like have time to find your own place. And I was like, bless you, like grateful. And so then I stayed with him for about a month. And then things kind of like got a little shaky there, and I had to again find another place to stay. I stayed with friends for a few days until I could get my own place. And then one of my friends connected me with a sister who had an open room. Again, kind of another like situation. I feel like I'm a broken record here. It's just like been replaying itself. And I do kind of feel like it's a little bit of escapism from what I know to be true about my path. And trying to do things on my own. To be really frank and honest, I have struggled with lone wolf syndrome and feeling like I have to do everything myself because, again, childhood things that we as adults just replay. So all this has really shown me the patterns that I've been living in and what is needed in order to really release those and to decondition those and to really step into a new version of myself and a new way of being through all of this. And then I just kept being connected with friends of friends that had open spaces. And that's where I am now and how I am here right now doing what I'm doing with you. But again, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. It has been a lot of crying on the bathroom floor, crying in my bed for 3 hours, like just feeling so defeated and of this pattern I talked about a little bit yesterday of really needing to ask for help and help from others and really being like scared of doing that. But when I do, it's just like I'm so provided for, and I think it just goes to show you like how much we really do need to rely on each other as human beings. And as we move into the age of Aquarius, it's only amplifying and growing stronger, this need that we all have to connect with each other and really rely on each other and get the fuck over lone wolf syndrome and mentality that we need to be independent and do it all ourselves. Like, it's complete bullshit, and it's a lie that's been fed to us that we need to release and let go of, as the South Node is in Sagittarius right now. Come home to your truth. So yeah, that's how I ended up in Hawaii. I don't know how long I'll be here. I don't know what's going to happen in the world in the next few weeks. As I talked about yesterday, it's looking kind of grim. So yeah, I'm really enjoying my time here. The Cancer season was really a lot of healing and processing for me, a lot of feeling. And now I feel like as Leo season has, things are picking back up again. I don't know if you've been feeling it at all today, but Leo season really has, like, the sun's come out. Like, it was raining for the past 5 days, which is really rare for it to be doing that. And so I just feel like since I like literally purged so much, the weather is like rewarding me with the sun again, because I really needed to go inward and really needed to stop escaping what was my soul was asking me to clear in my physical body, so that I can really step into the new and step into what I'm here to do, which is to share astrology with the world and to create and build a family. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the future, even though it does kind of look a little grim. I'm really excited, and I'm really grateful to be here during this time. There are no such thing as coincidences, so you're here for a reason, and whatever your heart and your soul is asking for you to do is what you need to be doing right now, and stop putting pressure on yourself to perform or create a cushion of money, because it's not going to be worth anything soon. So what can you do to honor your soul and your heart and what you know to be true within inside of yourself? And what is coming up for you that needs to be purged and released and processed? Because that is what we need to be doing during this time, is ridding ourselves of the conditioning we've all been subject to, so that we can really step into the light that we came here to be and create the new earth together. So with that, I will leave you. I'm excited to hear how this resonated with you and what your takeaways are. And yeah, if you've gone through any of that yourself, let me know. I would love to hear from you. I love you all so much, and until next time, stay blessed, and stay thriving. Much love.